The sugar you take in your morning chai or coffee is directly linked to child labor, slavery, and a political scandal so massive that it doesn't even make the news anymore. There's a secret mafia making thousands of crores in profit by stealing from farmers and stealing from you, the taxpayer. But the reason you don't hear about it is because that mafia is the government, the very politicians you elected to power. But here's the thing, this is not a BJP versus Congress scenario. I wish it was that simple. As we speak, politicians from the BJP, the Congress, and several regional parties have cornered an industry so large that it's trapped millions of farmers in debt and is probably the single biggest contributor to water shortages and droughts in the country. It's also one of the driving forces behind the recent E20 push by the government to dilute petrol with ethanol, because byproducts of sugar manufacturing are the biggest source of ethanol in India. There are political families, sugar cooperatives, and private corporations that are using their power to capture votes, influencing state politics by supporting different parties, and using shady schemes to force the government to pay them crores in taxpayer money. It's time we got to the heart of India's most corrupt industry and understood how the sugar mafia became so powerful. Let's look at these three states: Maharashtra, Uttar Pradesh, and Karnataka. They account for 80% of all sugar produced in India, and a huge chunk of their agricultural economy relies on sugarcane. But what's crazy is that despite these three states producing twice as much sugar as the whole of China, they're still operating under outdated laws from 60 years ago. Back in the 50s and 60s, India was trapped in the grip of the license Raj, which made it almost impossible to start a business without waiting years for government approval. But in 1966, a new law was passed, the Sugarcane Control Order, which said that any two sugar mills had to have a minimum distance of 15 kilometers from each other. This law was supposed to ensure that each mill had its own supply of sugarcane and wouldn't cannibalize each other. But in practice, this just ended up creating a localized monopoly for individual mills. Farmers were forced to sell their sugarcane to just one mill, and if that mill decided to pay them less, they were just kinda screwed. Okay, but the government also enacted the Fair and Remunerative Price, or FRP, that same year. So farmers were guaranteed a fair payout for their crop. So what's the problem? Well, this is where owners of the sugar mills have perfected a series of loopholes and outright fraud that basically guarantees that they pay farmers the minimum possible amount while they extract the maximum profit from selling processed sugar. I'll show you exactly how they do that. But first, let's look at the three biggest sugar producers in India, starting with Maharashtra. In the years after independence, Maharashtra established a system where cooperatives managed the sugar industry, where farmers and industrialists would have an equal stake in the success of the business. But politicians were able to hijack this system by gaining control of the cooperative boards, which allowed them to control or even fully own the mills. A 2019 survey showed that out of 180 mills in Maharashtra, 77 were owned by leaders in the BJP, 53 by politicians in the Nationalist Congress Party or NCP, 43 by Congress, and the remainder by Shiv Sena leaders. These politicians have weaponized the government safeguards by simply not paying farmers the FRP rate that they're supposed to receive. Sugar mills regularly rack up arrears of hundreds of crores that don't get paid out to the farmers, saying, "Oh no, we're running a loss this year, we can't afford to pay the farmers." So the government has to step in and make the payments. But obviously, there's zero consequences to the politically connected owners of the mills. Oh, and here's something else. Can you guess why the price of sugarcane goes down during election years and every sugarcane mill sees a major drop in revenue? If you said because sugar mills divert their money to funding election campaigns, ding ding ding, 10 points to you for paying attention. Since politicians control the mills and their revenue, they can conveniently channel it to political funding whenever they need to. And because the sugar mills are governed by zoning regulations under the Sugarcane Control Order, they have a ready-made vote bank in the farmers who are forced to sell their sugarcane only to them. But at least Maharashtra established cooperatives to run their sugar industry. In Uttar Pradesh, private companies run the whole show. The vast majority of mills are owned by massive conglomerates who have an enormous influence in the political sphere of UP. It's not like they didn't try to establish cooperatives. There was a network of government-supported sugarcane societies called Ganna Samitis that managed the production of sugar in the state. But the all-powerful private sugar companies used their deep pockets to fund political campaigns and lobbies that gradually dismantled cooperatives, leaving them the de facto sugar barons of Uttar Pradesh. Here too, the sugar mills organized into a mafia that had the power to dictate the price of sugarcane and used every possible method to delay payments to desperate farmers. One of the most common tactics was to rig weigh bridges that checked the weight of sugarcane trucks so it showed a lower number than what was actually there. Even on modern electronic weigh bridges, they've been known to install specialized microchips that allow them to remotely control them. Until recently, it was common for sugar mill owners to tamper with the software used to report sugarcane supplies. But even UP's situation seems like it'd be better than Karnataka's, because here, a small number of influential families own almost the entire sugar refining industry. The most prominent among these is the Jarkiholi family, where 5 brothers control a huge chunk of the sugar and ethanol industries in the state. What's really interesting is that the brothers periodically switch alliances between BJP and Congress, ensuring they're always protected no matter what government comes into power. By the way, if you're enjoying this video so far, please like this video, subscribe and share it with your friends and family. You can also find all my videos on Spotify, where you can either listen to it like a podcast or watch it like a video. Either way, it really helps me keep making in-depth videos like this. Now back to the sugar mafia. Okay, so Maharashtra, UP and Karnataka all have sugar industries that are partially or totally controlled by politicians and their families. But exactly how bad is the situation? How much are we as taxpayers losing in this political circus? Well, you just need to look at the recent Maharashtra State Cooperative Bank scam, where allegedly 25,000 crore rupees was siphoned from government-controlled banks by sugar barons. For context, this scam began way back in 2008 but is still stuck in a legal battle in 2026. Here's what they did. Maharashtra has a bunch of district-level cooperative banks, and at the top is the MSCB. Politicians sitting on the boards of these district banks would push for the MSCB to approve massive loans with zero collateral to sugar factories controlled by those politicians' families. Then, these sugar mills would be deliberately mismanaged, so they ended up losing money and going into massive debt. So the MSCB would seize the mills and auction them off at a throwaway price. Except, those auctions were rigged, and the same politicians who bankrupted the mills would buy them back through shell companies for a fraction of their actual value. And the cycle would repeat. Public money meant to boost Maharashtra's agricultural economy was being siphoned into the pockets of corrupt politicians to the tune of 25,000 crore rupees. But in a 2026 hearing, a local court ruled that there was no criminal conspiracy. There was no proof that backroom dealings had been made, and the auctions were overseen by RBI-appointed administrators. So basically nothing happened, and the case has just stalled in court once again. In UP, sugar mills have been defaulting on sugarcane taxes for decades, and cases keep piling up in court with no legal action taken against the mill owners. In Karnataka, after sugar mills failed to pay farmers for several months, the government stepped in to offer a 400 crore rupee tax exemption to the mills. Anytime the payment arrears get too steep, mill owners just change their political alliance to whichever party is in power, basically giving them a get-out-of-jail-free card. Just look at the example of former Congress leader Radhakrishna Vikhe Patil, who owns a sugar empire in Ahmednagar. In 2019, he and his son Sujay defected to BJP, and Sujay got elected to the Lok Sabha from the Ahmednagar constituency. Everywhere you look, sugar barons played the system against itself, rewarding themselves for tax evasion and financial malfeasance, all because they're the ones making and enforcing the laws. But it actually gets much worse, because it's one thing to steal money from taxpayers and another thing entirely to force poor workers into bonded labor, aka modern slavery. Sugar mills hire contractors who recruit migrant workers to do the labor-intensive task of harvesting the sugarcane, stripping the leaves, and bundling it for transport. These laborers are paid in advance of between 50,000 to 1,20,000 rupees every harvest season. But in order to earn out that much money, they have to harvest 1 to 2 tons of sugarcane per worker every single day. That means 14 to 16 hours of back-breaking labor every day with no days off. These workers have to live in temporary camps near the farms where their living conditions are atrocious and they get no access to clean running water, electricity, or even toilets. Child labor is incredibly common in the sugarcane harvesting business because migrant workers with children can't afford to send them to school. The women and children get basically zero safety, and it's not uncommon to hear about cases of women workers and young girls being raped by local men in the sugarcane fields. But one of the darkest outcomes of the sugarcane harvest season is the epidemic of hysterectomies among women workers. You see, labor contractors want to maximize the output during harvest season, so they charge laborers a penalty of 500 to 1,000 rupees if they miss even one day of work when they fall sick. So instead of missing a day or two of work when they're menstruating, these women laborers are forced to get their uterus surgically removed. No more uterus, no more periods, no need to take a day off. That's the brutal economics of being a poor laborer in India's sugar industry. But for the millionaire sugar barons, this business is a gold mine that keeps on giving. Because one of the byproducts of sugar manufacturing is molasses, which can be processed into ethanol. And recently, ethanol has been the hot new topic as India is trying to reduce their oil imports by blending ethanol into petrol. Now, whether E20 petrol is actually going to help or harm us in the long run is a topic for another video. But let's look at what the cost of this is, not just for India's economy, but the environment. Since 2018, the government has been giving out thousands of crores in soft loans to sugar mills across the country to help them create ethanol distillation plants. They've offered premium prices to ethanol produced from sugarcane, resulting in share prices for sugar and ethanol companies to skyrocket. And let's not forget, Nitin Gadkari's son, Nikhil Gadkari, is the director of one of India's largest ethanol manufacturers. And yet, notice how the opposition led by Congress never really criticizes Gadkari or his push for E20 fuel. Because as we've seen, they also get tons of funding from sugar and ethanol. There's clearly blatant corruption and insider trading within the BJP, Congress, and several other parties, and the only losers are we, the citizens. And it only gets worse for us because there's another important factor to think about: water usage. It'd be fine if ethanol was only being made using waste byproducts from sugar refining, but with the new push to increase the percentage of ethanol blending from 20% to 25% and even 50%, we're already seeing sugarcane being grown specifically for the production of ethanol. And this is bad because sugarcane is an insanely water-intensive crop being grown in a country that has chronic water shortages and droughts almost every single year. In that case, we'd be using close to 3,000 liters of water to produce just 1 liter of ethanol. And this is when we could instead be focusing agricultural resources towards growing hardy, nutritious food crops like millets and oilseeds like sunflower and soybeans to reduce our expensive imports of edible oils. The government knows this, and they've been trying to switch to the less water-intensive maize as the main source of ethanol. But now they're up against the sugar lobbies, which are full of their own politicians and the opposition. All of them are lobbying to increase the amount of ethanol blending in petrol, and for that ethanol to come from sugarcane. So, no pressure. The thing about mafias is that they crop up anywhere where there's lots of money to be made and very little regulation. The people of Tamil Nadu saw that firsthand when a small group of politically connected businessmen began illegally mining granite from government-owned quarries and making thousands of crores in profits. But when one honest IAS officer decided to investigate the mining underworld in Madurai, he uncovered an international conspiracy that would destroy his life, lead to multiple assassinations, and an ongoing legal battle against some of the most powerful men in Tamil Nadu. You can check out my full video on the Granite Mafia right here. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget you can also find my videos on Spotify. Please support my channel by liking this video, get subscribed, and become a channel member to get early access to videos and exclusive content. I'll see you in the next one.